We've had a number of prominent diplomats and government officials visit this campus this year. But the man we're having here today is no ordinary ambassador. He's a good friend, not only of a number of us personally, but of the International Center and of the university. He's a man of great experience. His Excellency Mohammed Kamal was appointed ambassador to Jordan, to the United States, ambassador of Jordan to the United States in April of 1985, after a long professional career in communications in the media field. His service with the government of Jordan began in 1966 when he was assigned to establish Jordan Television, JTV. Those of you who know anything about the Middle East know that that television extends on over into Israel and other adjacent states and has a great impact in that area of the world. He remained JTV's Director General until his retirement in 1984, after which he became president of a media consultancy company. Ambassador Kamal was born in Palestine, I think Jerusalem.
No,
in 1916, where he began his professional career. In 1916, he began his professional career as the superintendent of the press at the government secretariat. Right?
It's not right.
This comes from the Jordan Information Bureau. In 1948, upon the Israeli occupation of Palestine, he moved to Beirut, Lebanon, where he remained in private business, economic research, and journalism until 1966. He does hold a degree in political science and economics from the American University of Beirut. I know that's true. He is married and has 6 children. He has been here before on the campus, and he is the key, or whatever word we should use, the linchpin, to an unfolding, I hope, growing, cordial, and significant educational relationship between Brigham Young University and Jordan. My own feelings of gratitude and respect and admiration of Ambassador Kamal were enriched as several of us, including Dr. Hillam and Omar Cater isn't here yet, but will be here in a few minutes, and Erland Peterson, President Holland, and Ambassador Kennedy had the rich privilege at the invitation of the ambassador to visit his home country, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. My own feelings I expressed in a letter to the ambassador recently, and I'll quote just one brief paragraph from that on the impact of that and my feelings for him and the kind of man he is, not only as a public servant, but in terms of character, in terms of sensitivity to human problems and devotion to the students. It would be impossible to exaggerate my feelings of affection and wonder at Your Excellency. Only His Excellency Mohammed Kamal could have arranged such a magnificent combination of sights and sounds and personal events for our Brigham Young University visiting group. Who else on one single Sunday was ever received in audience by His Majesty King Hussein and Their Royal Highnesses Crown Prince Hassan and Princess Tharwat and Prime Minister Zaid Rifai and Ali Gandour, Chairman of the Chief Executive Officer of Royal Jordanian Airlines, and in addition to all these others, was graciously hosted by so many prominent people in your country, in beautiful homes and in places where we also had an opportunity to meet the mayor of Bethlehem, the American ambassador, the British embassy staff, and many others. I would like to believe that in all the history of the Hashemite kingdom, that many distinguished people have never been lined up together for personal conversation in one single day. And this is a reflection of your social and political influence and power. The word, I guess, is clout. But also of your unbounded commitment and friendship for Brigham Young University. He's a great exponent and a great proponent of BYU in Washington and elsewhere, and we're deeply honored to have a man of his experience, his credentials, his sensitivity, and his good character to be here to talk about the prospects for peace in the Middle East, which I hope will include some comments on the recent summit that was held in Amman. It is my distinct pleasure and high honor, and I mean that sincerely, to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Kamal from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Professor Ram and my dear friend, Professor Parma, you made me speechless before, and you are making me much more speechless this time. So I reserve my response to you later on, because you have been wonderful all through, and as you all know, there are about little more than 3,000 universities in the United States. I have been to a large number of them. I have spoken to faculty and students, and have visited the various campuses, and there was no refreshing institution I have visited in the United States or in the whole world more than this great institution. This is my third visit to this Brigham Young University. I found it, the campus beautiful, especially in the spring. The students, whether boys or girls, are happy, healthy, neat, and I find it extremely refreshing in this age of regularity, permissiveness, and bad behavior, to have such a big institution, great institution, preaching sanity and correctness in life. And I must congratulate you, the students, for being in part of this great institution. And wherever I go, whether in the Middle East or in Europe or in the United States, I always, Brigham Young University students and professors are always my speaking points. So I'm really happy and pleased to be with you, and I hope to see more of you in Jordan and the Middle East, and any group of you who wishes to go there, we could help to arrange a visit for you there. There will be some 150 students visiting Jordan very soon who are in Jerusalem now, and we are making plans that those students who go to your center in Jerusalem will be able to spend about 6 weeks also in Jordan to see the other side of the story in that wretched part of the world. So again, I'm very happy to be with you, and I will speak to you briefly. I'm telling you, I'm not a career diplomat. I have no particular ideology and do not belong to a particular party. I'm very independent, and there is no harm a person can give to students who are preparing themselves for the leadership of this country for the future than to help them to be credulous. Credulity is the major enemy for any person. I mean, there is always another side of to the story, and you must always seek the facts and the truth, and not take things for granted, whether they are coming to you from the Arab side or from the Israeli side. Always just do the necessary work and never be credulous in dealing with any particular subject. I'll speak to you briefly about the Palestinian problem because I was born myself in Palestine. I lived the tragedy. I know its details, and I have in Palestine many Jewish friends. And my personal doctor was Jew. My family doctor was Jewish. My children's doctor was Jewish. And we lived happily. We socialized with each other. And so I have no particular prejudices against anybody on account of their religion or race or anything of the sort. Anyhow, the Jews in the world, in Europe especially, were suffering from persecution and pogroms, and many of their leaders thought that only a Jewish national home or Jewish state will solve their problem. And the dice fell on Palestine on account of the Bible, biblical records and so on. The Jews have always been in that part of the world, and there's certain provisions apparently in the Bible which say Palestine is for the Israelis and for the Jews, something of the sort. Well, we have not to discuss whether they are right or wrong in that, but the British gave them the Balfour Declaration in 1917, and that was endorsed by the League of Nations in Geneva, and the British took mandate over Palestine, and they appointed the first British High Commissioner, who was Sir Herbert Sumner, who was Jewish, and appointed the first Attorney General, Sir Norman Bentwish, who was also Jewish, and the first Commissioner of Lands, Mr. Abramson, who was also a British Jew. And the idea was to facilitate the creation of a Jewish national home in Palestine. Of course, the Arabs or the Palestinians living in Palestine at the time, after centuries of domination by the Turks, resisted that. They had no experience, and they were overwhelmed. The quality of the Jews there was much better because they came from Eastern Europe and other places. And they resisted that, and there were trouble in Palestine in 1929 and 1936 to 1939. Then the war came, and there was trouble between the Jews and the British, and later on between the British and between the Jews and the Arabs. And many commissions were sent. There was the White Paper in 1939, which the Arabs rejected. There was the Partition Plan in 1947, which the Arabs also rejected. And in 1948, the Partition Plan gave to the Israelis 40% of Palestine. They have now 80% of the country, and the remaining 20% are under their occupation. And we have about 4 million Palestinians in the diaspora, and there's a conflict in the Middle East which continues to occupy the attention of the whole world. Many attempts to resolve the problem has failed, and the American administration, we had the 1967 war and Resolution 242, and President Johnson at the time told the king that if you accept that resolution, we will assure you that will be implemented in 6 months. And now 20 years and the resolution has not been implemented. We had 1973 war, and we have 1956 war, and the trouble continues in the Middle East, and the conflict is spreading. And we had the troubles in Lebanon, which is a direct result of the Palestinian problem, and the problems between Iran and Iraq is also an indirect result of the Palestinian problem. And that sensitive part of the world, which is lies between 3 continents, the world communications, 60% of the oil reserves in the world, the seat of the 3 great religions, area of heritage, history, and civilization. As I tell many of my friends, that area is becoming the most miserable place to live in. And the Jews have been intoxicated by their victories in 1967, and this has also elated the American Jewish community in the United States. And there are many international intrigues taking advantage of the situation, and the problem remains unresolved. The King Hussein, has worked very hard to start the peace process. And in 1985 and early 1986, they spent several months to say we will speak with this Palestinian and not that Palestinian, and so on. and much precious time was lost. And King and Jordan and the Arabs have been asking for an international conference. What is the idea of international? Many Israelis and many Americans and many people say, why you don't go and speak with the Israelis as has President Sadat done? Just go and talk to them and say they are willing to talk. But why you don't go and speak with them? Well, Egypt has a population of 52 million people against 3.5 or 4 million people in Jordan. Egypt could afford to live without the Arab world. Jordan, tiny small country with limited resources, could not do that. We have a large number of Palestinians living in the area. We are surrounded by Israel, Syria, Egypt, and Iraq, and we simply could not do it. And the king has been working for a comprehensive, lasting, peaceful settlement to the area, which all parties of the conflict are there. And he did not want the idea of an international conference for the fun of it, but in order to give legitimacy for any agreement reached, and to stop those elements that obstruct the peaceful settlement from making mischief out of it. I do not believe that a international peace conference will take place in the next 2 years, at least. The Israelis are divided. Some want an international conference. The other part, headed by Prime Minister Shamir, does not accept the idea. He does not even accept the exchange of peace for land. And he says West Bank and Gaza, or what he calls them Judea and Samaria, are eternal parts of Israel. And the other half believes an international peace conference and territorial compromise. The American administration and the Israelis are not enthusiastic about it. And when you rob any negotiation or any meeting from enthusiasm, you are robbing it from its essential elements of success. So the American administrations, they don't accept the idea of international conference, and the Israelis refuse it. And they accepted that with reluctance. And once you accept it with reluctance, you are lacking enthusiasm. And when you lack enthusiasm, you means you have an element of failure in it. Then the Israelis put other conditions. They say they will not allow the Soviet Union to participate unless they approve of Jewish immigration and restore diplomatic relations with Israel. And you don't expect a superpower like the Soviet Union to accept these terms. Then again we come to the Palestinian representation. The Palestinians say, or the leadership say at the present, that they will go in a single delegation, and at the same time they do not accept 242 and 338, which will be the basis of any negotiations. So there's another Palestinian problem. And then you have got the modalities. The Americans and the Israelis want to be a ceremonial international conference. The Arabs and the French and the British and the Russians want it to be authoritative and substantive. And add all these obstacles and the fact that this administration is next year while having election year, and already the elections started now. You have the investigations about Iran-Contra affair, you have your deficit, you have other domestic problems. And I believe these do not give the time or the urge on the part of the administration to give priority at present for the Middle Eastern problem, although many of them wish that they'll be able to resolve such a difficult problem. So this is the question regarding the International Peace Conference as it stands at present. Now, the main problem of the Arabs has been two things. A, there's a large American Arab community in the United States. Some say it's been 4 to 7 million people. And these are not active, at least to counter the activities of the American Jewish community. And you know the American Jewish community, they have about 6 million people of them. They are highly established in the legal, medical, and the business communities. There are about 3.6 million of them in the East Coast, with the seat of government and business and so on. And they are very generous, very active, very sophisticated. They have one item on their agenda, Israel. They contribute generously, and they are working with the system with admiration to the advantage of Israel. On the other side, the American Arabs, although they started recently some activity, they most of the time reflect the divisions and subdivisions in the Middle East, and instead of being an asset to the Arab cause, they are sometimes a liability. Furthermore, the Arab states, being young, emerging states, struggling to assert themselves, sometimes do not have the right spokesman, and sometimes commit acts in that part of the world which does not endear them to the Americans or to the Europeans. Of course, you can explain that because they are lack of experience and they could not stomach the humiliation, the fact that people have been displaced and dispossessed and dispersed all over the world, and in such cases people lose their minds and so on. And their activities are very much exaggerated in this country for obvious reasons, which all of you know. There are 25,000 murders in the United States every year. Nobody mentions anything about them. And the total number of Americans killed overseas in the Middle East area is not more than 8 or 10 in the year. Anyhow, it is a sad story, and I hope history will resolve it, but I'm telling you that the Palestinians alone will be in less than 30 years more than the total Jewish people in the whole world. And there are at the present 5,000 Palestinian professors in American universities in the United States, teaching in the United States universities. The Arab people in less than 80 years will number 1,000 million people at least. There is bitterness, feeling of humiliation and frustration developing in the area, and unless a peaceful resolution is made, everybody will be unhappy. The Jews, the Arabs, the world will be extremely unhappy from the continued state of affairs in that sensitive part of the world. We hope the meeting that took place in Amman on the 8th of November, and the first summit meeting for over 6 years, and the Arabs should have met repeatedly before, but I don't know what is happening to those people. I mean, when they are in difficulties, they never meet, and anyhow, the king worked very hard, and they met, and they had a successful meeting in Amman. They reviewed the Iraq-Iran war and had a consensus, an unanimous decision, and I believe about 4 or 5 heads of states, Arab states, will be visiting Iran very soon. They had an agreement, consensus regarding Iraq-Syrian relations, and the arrangement reached is very genuine. They have started with an economic commission to study economic matters. There will be a resumption very soon, we hope, of diplomatic relations and the exchange of ambassadors. The pipeline that passed through Syria from Iraq will be activated, or the Iraqis do not need it at the present. And the information we have is that the approachment is absolutely very genuine. And all the Arab states, without exception and without reservation from any country, have accepted the idea of negotiations for resolution of the Palestinian, the Arab-Israeli conflict, and they have accepted the idea of the international peace conference. And hitherto, Syria, for instance, used to say that we will never talk with the Israelis unless we attain strategic parity with them. But now they have accepted the idea of negotiations in an international peace conference, which is a very important development. And that was Arab consensus, not about, there were no reservations to that. And for the first time, they referred to Israel and not to the Zionist entity as before. And I believe these are good signs, and we hope forces of sanity and moderation will ultimately prevail. There are many enemies for peace in the Middle East, and there are many people working for peace, both among the Americans, American Jews, and Israelis and Arabs. And I believe if these forces join together, there will be at last peace in that very important part of the world. That's all what I want to tell you. I'm happy to be with you here. I was not prepared to speak to anybody today, but this gentleman asked me to. And we hope to see many of you in Washington or in Jordan. And we will organize some groups from you to go there. And we hope we will be able to learn more about that part of the world and about Jordan. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. Yes, of course.
His Excellency has agreed to field some questions if you'd like to ask them. Dill?
Yes, you mentioned that you think some of the activities of the Arab Americans might have even been harmful instead of helpful to the Arab cause. Are you willing to be specific?
No, I did not say this. Wait a minute. They sometimes reflect the divisions and subdivisions in the Middle East.
And that itself
it's very clear. If you go to an Arab community, if you go to Detroit, there are people from Iraq, from Yemen, from Syria, from the other place. And even I went yesterday to Utah University, and even the students themselves don't feel heart to heart, just there's something basically wrong with the Arab race. I don't know what is it. I mean, but ultimately they are moving on the right track at present, and they tend to magnify differences. But these are phases in history. I mean, you should remember that 200 years ago, this great country was founded by 13 states. There was a great deal of infighting between them. Jealousies, grudge, and abuse, and so on. But nevertheless, they formed the basis of a very great nation. And we are passing through a teething problem in the Middle East. Egypt is only independent 31 years ago after the Suez War. 1956, the last British troops withdrew from it. The others are 30, 25, 40 years, and so on. All that came to us has been a curse in many ways. Instead of making a car, we bought one. And instead of building civilization, we bought civilization. And plenty of international intrigues, and people finding themselves suddenly dealing with millions. They become out of gear and disbalanced. This is a passing phase in history. And I have been telling my American Jewish friends here that by your support to Israel, you are doing them a great deal of harm and good at the same time. You can delay the process of history, but I tell them also that you could never stop it. And if you want to solve your Jewish problem, you have to have the Israelis accepted in the Middle East and not imposed on it. Acceptance means solution to your problem. Imposition, you may delay the course of history, but you could never stop it. And I gave them some example of South Africa, Rhodesia in Africa, and Goa settlement in India. They might carry on. They are benefiting from the variables, Israelis now, unlimited American support, Arab quarrels, their qualitative edge, but these are variables. The constants are there. The Arab race is a proud race, they do not forget. Their number is increasing rapidly, as well as their education and technology. And either they live and coexist with them, or wait the consequences of history. And I believe they are very much concerned at the present. They are seriously concerned, and they are working very hard for peace. And many organizations have passed recently resolution, and the last one was in Chicago between the 29th and 3rd of November by the Union of Hebrew Congregations, and which represents 1/3 of the American Jewish population, about 2 million membership. And they stated, as I said, that the retention, the status quo in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, what they call it, is damaging to the character, moral stature, and security of Israel. And they urge the Israelis to work diligently for peaceful resolution of the problem, either through bilateral talks or through international participation. And this is very refreshing, and for the first time this is coming out from American Jewish organization. And the forces for peace are plentiful, but again your system, the system of government in the United States, which is a good system to you, which is bad for us, at least by further the least, is complicating the matters immensely. No resolution, no initiative ever proposed by the American administration has been pushed through. They make the statement, and that will be the end of it. Thank you.
Please identify yourself. Yes.
My name is Steve Colby.
Student?
I'm a student. Last year I was reading that Jordan and under Prime Minister Perez, there was an attempt to create a Jordan-sponsored Arabic bank on the West Bank. And this year, in effect, bypassing the PLO. And this year, during the summit in Amman, it seems that Yasser Arafat didn't have a whole lot to play on in the summit itself. I was wondering, my question is Jordan, is King Hussein's attempt, is he making an attempt to try to bypass the PLO and Yasser Arafat, or is there some kind of amends that they're trying to make? We see that the PLO seems not to be playing so big a part anymore. I was wondering if...
No, I know what's what I explained to you. Well, we continue to recognize the PLO as well as all Arab states, as well as more than 130 nations in the United Nations, to be the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. We deal with them that way, and unless the Palestinians find another arrangement, we will continue to deal with them on that basis, and we continue to recognize the PLO. Regarding our activities in the West Bank has been a part of Jordan until 1967. We still maintain strong relation with them. We still pay the salaries of the teachers, the doctors, and engineers, and legal staff, and so on. And we have never abandoned that relation at all. We wanted to improve the quality of life in that in West Bank and Gaza, and in order for people to stay in there and not leave. And we have started, of course, because the Israelis are the occupying power, you have to get their approval. And through the Americans, we were able to have banks open there to make life easier and to make small industries to flourish in the West Bank, so that people will stay on the soil and have not be forced to leave. But I tell you, in 1948, the population of the West Bank was 460,000. In 1967, they were 950,000. By the same number, the next 20 years, there should be a little more than 2 million. They are less than 800,000 now. It means the Israeli policy has always been to thin out the population so that the land they will have without the Arab population in it. So it's not a question of bypassing Yasser Arafat, and we are working with all concerned with absolute harmony. Sometimes they do not like what they do. Sometimes we do not like what they do themselves. But this is, this takes place in every place in the world.
Questions? Yes.
Ron, student. Your Excellency, a few weeks ago, many of us listened to a representative of Israel, State of Israel, and Walter Aitan. He spoke about the historical right or claim that many nations in the Middle East have. For example, the historical Egyptian dynasty, the Persians and the Iranians, the Lebanese, and also the Israelis. But one thing he said was that the Jordanian government doesn't have that same historical claim to their area, to their land, and he used this as kind of an excuse or a reason for many of the actions of the Israelis. And I was wondering, does Your Excellency's government have an opinion on that, and what historical background and what historical claim your country feels?
Well, we have not to deal with historical claims on any subject. Now we have a fact. We have Israel there, strong, powerful, supported by the United States and other countries, and they are there. And we have a problem, and we have to solve that problem. To say that the Israelis have it is promised land by the Almighty to them, and all depict the Almighty as real estate agent, giving lands to people and taking them away from them. We have a problem now. We have to resolve it, and the Syrians did say during the last summit meeting to the Palestinians, to Yasser Arafat, well, there hasn't been a Palestinian state in history. And Palestine, what you call Palestine, was called Southern Syria. And we have all kinds of claims, but we have a situation now. The state of Israel now, we have a Palestinian problem, we have this confusion in the Middle East. If you want to go to history and claims and counterclaims, and then you want to, then the Mexicans have the right to claim Texas and all these areas. I mean, this is all nonsense. We have a problem. We have to resolve it because it's causing a great deal of headache to everybody, including the United States and to you in this room. And let's work very hard to resolve it. Who's right and who's wrong is not the issue now. Whether the state of Israel exists or does not exist is not the issue. We have a problem. We have to resolve it. And life is very short. Maximum you get when you pass away after many, many years is 2 meters by 50 centimeters. And why you should spend your time in conflict and turmoil and hatred and so on. And I believe this is what this great institution has been teaching you.
Question right here.
My name is Kevin Montgomery. I'm an MBA student. I'm wondering, because I've heard many people come and say that the United States is not supporting peace properly or is supporting actions that do not cause peace but cause more conflict. What can the United States do, or what should the United States do to increase the peace in the Middle East?
Well, I tell you, the past 30 months and 12 days I have been here, I knew your system very well before I came. You are a great country, a superpower, very rich. You are about 8,000 miles away from us. And average American, I'm interested in his car, family, bills, credit cards, and he's not concerned about the other things. Now, your system here of government is very interesting to you, but it's harmful to us in the Middle East. Because everything appears to be highly commercialized. This great country is able to produce thousands of politicians. But you fail, you have to use the microscope to find statesmen. And the system is very, very simple. When you have a senator in California spending $15 million to retain his seat, and the total amount he receives in the 6 years is not more than $400,000. Those who raised the money, gave him the money, or gave him his votes, or helped him, control him. And therefore he, in certain matters, he behaves out of interest, not out of conviction. And I've spoken to many senators and congressmen. They tell me you are right, We are ashamed, but we could not vote for you. And the other day, the Saudis applied for a package of arms. And, they took away the fighters. They took away the missiles fund, and was very much reduced. And 33 senators are due for re-election next year. 29 of the 33 signed that letter opposing the sale. So these people are interested in their election and their re-election. And apparently highly organized groups are able to see that you are elected or you are defeated in the elections. And therefore, people are follow policy police resistance. We can get trouble from being unfriendly to the American Jews and to the Israelis. We have no harm that might befall on us from if we vote against the Arabs, and so the process goes. And so we are suffering from your system. It's a good system for you. Apparently, in this case, it's the best system for us.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Page Davis, I'm a student. I have a question. In studying about the Middle East, we learned about the Islamic faith, and we learned in the Islamic faith to make the very basic distinction between the Dar al-Islam and the Dar al-Harb, and how the Islamic faith will eventually overcome the Dar al-Harb. How, while enlightened people such as yourself may understand the necessity for getting along with those who are not of the Islamic faith, how can you pass this on to those that are maybe, the shopkeepers and the farmers who have grown up thinking of, the Islamic faith and everyone else?
Well, this fundamentalism is all over the world, even in the United States. In the Middle East, I don't know why it is there. It's a question of frustration and disappointments and things of the sort. But I believe it is a phase in history. I don't think it will last long. And I was visiting the Jordanian University this last summer. I had a meeting with the president of the university. We have in the Jordanian University, we have about 12,000 students. 55% of them are girls and 45 boys. And 35% of the girls have this Islamic dress. Well, not Islamic dress, And I asked the professor, why is this? Why to research this? And, are these girls, their parents are religious and they compel them to be like that? Or they are themselves religious and wanted to be like that? Or are they being paid by a certain organization to increase and develop this movement for certain ends? Is it a social problem? There are many rich girls and many poor ones, and by having this uniform dress, they can remove that embarrassment, and so the embarrassment to them will be reduced. Is it an application for marriage? I mean, when you see in this permissive word that this girl is pious and religious, she can get easily marriage license? Or is it a cover of mischief? I really don't know what's worthwhile to research. So these tendencies in the Middle East, I mean, really, they're expressions of frustrations and disappointment, and I don't think they will last long. And I cannot accept that any sensible Iranian will accept that in the name of Islam, the Khomeinis ordered tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of plastic keys from Korea, which put them on the chests of teenagers, 12, 14, boys of 12, 14 or 13 years of old, in order to detonate bombs or mines, because that key will send them straight away to heavens. This is the way things are conducted there.